Work from home.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year, everyone. I would like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone to our January 9th meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first order of business today will be the consent agenda. These are items for which the petitioner is requesting withdrawal or continuance, or items for which staff has recommended approval and no one is signed up to speak in opposition. For public hearings today, each side will have a total of 12 minutes. There will be no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one is permitted to speak unless a planning board member addresses them for a question. For general use district zoning requests, the planning board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district being requested. The petitioner may not refer to a specific use for the property. For special use district zoning requests, however, the petitioner must identify the intended use or uses of the site and give specific details on how the site will be developed. Items under Section B of the agenda will require final action by the appropriate elected body, either the city council or county commissioners. As such, votes taken today by the planning board concerning these items are recommendations that will be considered by the elected bodies during their review of the request. Before addressing the planning board, we will need your name, address, and zip code for the record. Our first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the December 12th meeting. Is there a motion?
Move approval. Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous. I'm now going to call on Mr. Brian Wilson to review the consent agenda for us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, and welcome to our first 2025 Planning Board hearing. First item for today is C1, that's PBR 2024-12, Glencoe Investment Properties LLC. They have requested an additional continuance to the February 13th, 2025 meeting, and that was more than 8 days prior, so that continuance is automatic. And then our first item is B1, that's the W1714 Final Development Plan request. It's Lowe's Home Centers Incorporated. This is the Bank of Ozark Final Development Plan request. Again, the site is zoned HBS, and they're requesting final development plan of a two-phase zoning. The 0.74 acre site located at the northeast intersection of University Parkway and North Patterson Avenue. It's this private street here is Summit Point Lane. That's where the exit off of that Summit Point Lane. You can see the entirety of the site to the east is zone HBS for the shopping center. There's HB zoning on the west as well, so it's certainly within a commercial area. And this is the aerial. You may not be able to see at this scale, but it's got existing parking area here on the southern portion and then some unused property on the north. It's got some existing landscaping on it. There's that private street right there, that Summit Point Lane, going back in the parking area for the Sam's Club and the rest of the shopping center. And this is the area plan recommendation. It does recommend commercial land uses for this property and the majority of the property within the University Haynes Mill Road Activity Center. And a couple of slides for the site plan. You can see the proposed building in the center of the new proposed out parcel. It's going to have two drive-through lanes looping around. University here is on the western side. This is the private drive here. It's a right-in, right-out drive. And then they'll be accessing through this existing internal driveway from the parking area. And this is the proposed landscape plan, just to give you a more idea of what that will look like once everything is constructed and planted. There's one little tweak on a condition to add a landscape easement here so they can fit in the required street yard. The site plan does meet all UDO requirements, and staff does recommend approval of this request. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? All right, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board find the request is consistent with a comprehensive plan.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move the planning board recommend approval of W1714.
A motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
All right, Mr. Chairman, and item B2, that's case W3637. We'll have a full staff presentation on that after the consent agenda. So we'll move on to item B3, that's case W3640. This is Sedge Garden Baptist Church Incorporated, requesting to rezone an RS9 zone property to IP. It's a 2.11 acre site located on the northwest intersection of Linville Road and Kernersville Road. This is just west of the interchange here. You can kind of see some of the beltway changes there, proposed beltway changes, and they're actually undergoing construction right now. The church and this accessory building, we'll show that to you in just a moment. That's already existing. It is within an RS9 zone, predominantly RS9 zoned area, residential area, but it's still within the activity center for the interchange. Just give a little more context there. And again, here is the aerial. You can see that accessory building. I believe it's a meeting hall, and then the church property right here. This will be the ramps going to the interchange. And then here's the frontage along Linville Road. It does have two existing driveways on it. And this is the area plan map. It does recommend institutional land uses on this site in recognition of the existing church use. And this request does meet or does fulfill all of the recommendations of the area plan and 42045. Therefore, staff does recommend approval of this request. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions? All right. No one is signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board find that the request is consistent with a comprehensive plan.
A motion by Mr. Lamb. Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move the planning board recommend approval of W3640.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposition? That is unanimous.
All right, Mr. Chairman, and our next item is B4. That's case W3641. Petitioner is Gensight Development LLC. This is the Caliber Collision site on Fairlawn. They're requesting to rezone from GBS to GBS to add the single use. It's a 3.25 acre site located on the south side of Fairlawn Drive across from its intersection with Fairlawn Court. You can see the existing GBS zoning here. And then further to the west, this is the commercial zoning along Ronaldo Road. This is the data center, the GOS, and then we have the single family neighborhood to the east here. Excuse me, to the west, my apologies. And this is the aerial. You can see the site was mass graded, but the along the western property line, this was the tree save area. And so those trees have been retained, so that's existing tree canopy, and then you have the single family neighborhood here. This is the Culver's restaurant, and then the Sheets further to the east. And this is an existing private access drive that's being used to access this site, and then it continues further on to get to the Culver's Sheets. And this is the proposed land use map. Just a reminder, this plan was updated in 2014. It did recommend office uses. There were a mixture of uses recommended on the east side of Solace Creek Parkway at that time. The subsequent rezoning in 2015 and recognizing the environmental challenges along that eastern side, staff and at the time that planning board, city council saw the need for this commercial area to get moved, and so that effectively changed the area plan recommendation to a commercial land use recommendation. So that again does fit what the area plan recommendation is. And this is the site plan. It proposes an approximately 12,500 square foot collision repair facility with 11 service bays and all the attendant parking area. There'll be customer parking primarily up front, and then these will be gated access to be open during the day and then closed at night with a perimeter fence around the property. That's actually a requirement of the use. You can see the existing tree safe area. They are proposing a 100-foot type 3 buffer yard against that eastern property line. The tree safe area, that the existing trees will be contained within that's 75 feet and then an additional 25 feet of that buffer yard right there. So they've got a pretty large separation between the single family homes and this property here. There is an existing stormwater pond that will be used to serve the site. And I'm going to go ahead and move to the elevations here to give you a little more context. They're showing the primarily brick facade. They're meeting that requirement. And then they are volunteering fence elevations as well for the front fence and those gates. And then here are the renders. You can kind of get a little more feel for it right here on these renderings. You can see those access gates there and then the driveway entrance. The site plan does meet all UDO requirements, and staff does recommend approval of the rezoning request to add the use. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Just one. Just for understanding's sake, do we have any rules relative to how long what I would call salvage vehicles can stay in a fenced-in area like this, for instance?
No, as long as they're in the motor vehicle storage and salvage yard portion of the project, there isn't a limitation, but being a national chain, I believe it's probably in their best business interest to keep those moving out the door. A lot of times, you might have something that's there if there's they haven't got the insurance adjustment or something like that, but they want to move those through. It shouldn't be, some of your, with motor vehicle storage yards, a lot of time whenever you have automobile repair places that are more mom and pop, a lot of times you will have those situations where those cars sit there for a longer period of time. Again, being a national chain, I don't think that it will be an issue, but again, there is no limitation on how long they can be there.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposes? That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move the planning board recommend approval of W 3641.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposes, same sign. That is unanimous as well.
Okay, we'll move on to item B5. That is case F1652. Petitioner is Edward Raymond Longbottom, and he is requesting to rezone an RS9 zone property to AG. And it's a general use rezoning request. It's a 34.97 acre site located at the northern terminus of Quicksilver Drive, the western terminus of Tiger Eye Court. It just touches that and is. So you can kind of see where that staff recommendation is coming from as far as that goes. And this is the most recent aerial. The site is largely undeveloped with a single existing structure on the southeastern corner of the site. The area being graded is the Terrace at Border Creek subdivision. That was approved back in 2020. It's a 30-lot subdivision. You can see it kind of cut out a lot of the area that's flood zone. And this is the area plan land use recommendation map. It does recommend single-family residential at a density of 0 to 8 dwelling units per acre. That's fairly consistent with RS9. However, the comprehensive plan does recommend protecting flood zones from development that could increase groundwater pollution, increase runoff or soil erosion. As mentioned, a significant portion lies within the 100-year flood zone, and that would limit the buildable area of that site. Therefore, the proposed AG zoning would further limit the development potential on the site and is fitting with the on-site conditions. Therefore, staff did find that this was consistent with both the area plan recommendation, the general recommendations, and the comprehensive plan, and staff recommends approval of this request. Be happy to answer any questions you might
Any
have.
questions?
So is there any use that they're wanting to do that their current zoning doesn't allow for? Or is it
Yes.
just two downs? Oh, there is.
Yes.
Okay.
There are uses allowed in the AG district in the county that are not allowed in the RS9 district. Those are generally agricultural in nature. Given the, again, this is my opinion, and Chris or Kirk may correct me if I'm wrong, but given the size of the site, that is 37.59 acres, and the combination of the flood zone limits the amount, what you could potentially do even with those agricultural uses on the site.
And again, just to further clarify, since this is a general request, general use request, we can't really talk about any specific uses, but to echo what Brian said, staff believes that any agricultural uses that would be carried out here would be of a size or nature that they wouldn't have significant impacts on the adjoining single-family homes.
Any additional questions? All right, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the motion of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move the planning board recommend approval of F 1652.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Okay, moving on to our next case, that's item B6, case F1653. Petitioner is Clay Pigeon Properties LLC. This is the Woodhaven subdivision. They're requesting a site plan amendment for an RS20S zone site. It's in Growth Manager Area 5, the rural policy area, just east of Rural Hall. It's a 16.91 acre site located at the southeast intersection of Stanleyville Drive and Montlou Drive. You can see the property is surrounded by a mixture of agricultural AG zoning, RS30 to the north, and a little bit more RS20 further to the northwest. And here's the aerial. You can see that there's been, at least from what we could tell, it looks like the site has been timbered, but no other grading has occurred. And, you know, it's surrounded by a heavily wooded area there. And this is the area plan recommendation. It does recommend single-family land uses at a density of 0 to 8 dwelling units per acre. And this is the proposed site plan. Again, the reason we're bringing this for you today, the original plan, I'm going to move forward one and show you the original plan. It was previously approved as a standard major subdivision, and you can see how it was a double-loaded street design with a stub to the north and then a stub to the south. The engineers did a little more on-site work and found that they needed to realign the street design, and as a result of that, they could no longer double-load the street. The planned residential development use wasn't allowed use in the original rezoning, given that flexibility, but these changes were substantial enough to where it really needs to come back for a site plan amendment and can't be taken care of at the staff level. So going back to their proposed plan, you can kind of see that realignment of the street design. This will now have direct frontage along the entire eastern property line, so there's no intervening area. That's what that specific condition is related to. And it does continue to stub to the south in case there's any more proposed development to the south there. These are fairly thin lots, but they are allowed in the PRD has a no minimum lot size, and they meet all the other building code and fire code requirements. You can see they're kind of stopping the grading there, and then each lot, from what I understand from the engineer, is going to be served by on-site septic fields on each lot. They've got the active open space centrally located here with additional passive open space to the rear of that. And they are showing all of the required thoroughfare open space. And then they will have a small turnout for a mail kiosk. The site plan does meet all UDO requirements, and it met the intent of the original rezoning and that the use was allowed. Therefore, staff does recommend approval of this request, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? All right, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board find that the request is consistent with a comprehensive plan.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move the planning board recommend approval of F 1653.
A motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposes? That is unanimous.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, now we'll move on to item B7, that's case F1654. Petitioners are Nancy Johanna Carrasco and Prospero Carlos Carrasco, requesting to rezone a GI zone site to RS40 general use. It's a 3.08 acre site located at the eastern terminus of Hammock Farm Road. This is Hammock Farm Road, and then it goes back into a private easement there. It's just south of the railroad and Old Walkertown Road here. This is Walkertown zoning here, and of course the GI is the rail yard and the car depot there. You can see the existing RS40 zoning here. I don't have it in front of me for the note, but I believe we've had 3 rezonings in the recent past and then 4 in the past 20 years. So this is just kind of a continuation of that rezoning request to bring this into more alignment of the existing land use rather than the aspirational land use that was, they rezoned this to back in, I believe, the 68 or early 70s. And here is the aerial. You can see the site is heavily wooded in the rear. There's an existing single-family home here, and you can see those large lot single-family homes here as well. And you can see the edge of the rail yard there, the depot. The area plan does recommend single-family land uses at a density of 0 to 8 dwelling units per acre in recognition of the current use of the property. Therefore, staff does recommend approval of this rezoning request, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? All right, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the motion of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board find that the request is consistent with a comprehensive plan.
Motion by Mr. Lamb. Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move that the planning board recommend approval of F 1654.
Motion by Mr. Lamb. Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is also unanimous.
All right, Mr. Chairman, we'll now move on to the non-public hearing items. Again, C1 was automatically continued to your February meeting, so we'll move on to C2. That's PBR 2025-01. The petitioner is Duke Energy Carolinas LLC. This is the Box Mountain Road substation. This is requesting utilities in an RS30 zoning district. It's a 19.76 acre site located on the north side of Old Hollow Road between Box Mountain Road and Davis Road. You can see it's surrounded by a mixture of low-density residential, RS40 to the north, RS20 to the south, and this site is in RS30. And here is the proposed site plan with a little bit of a blow-up for you here on the left. You can see the site is fairly large, again, almost 20 acres. They are showing all the required perimeter buffer yard area. Again, going back to the aerial, just to, oh, there. I don't think I've got the aerial for this one, excuse me, because it's not a rezoning, my apologies. The site is fairly well, is wooded, heavily wooded. So it's pretty isolated from the perimeter. Staff doesn't anticipate any off-site impacts as related to this request, and the site plan does meet all UDO requirements. Therefore, staff does recommend approval of this request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, what's the motion of the board?
I move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That is unanimous.
Okay, and we'll move on to our last item is C3, that's PBR 2025-02. Petitioner is Wake Forest University. This is the grounds multifamily portion of the entire ground site there at the Coliseum. So requesting 229 apartment units in a general business zoning district. This portion of it is 8.61 acres, and it's located at the south side of Reynolds Boulevard and at the western terminus, the current terminus of West 32nd Street. University Parkway is here further to the west, and then this is where the current turn off the Cherry Street is. And this is the proposed site plan. It's they're depicting 3 4-story apartment buildings and then a centrally located pool area and clubhouse area with a pavilion, a pool pavilion right here. They're showing the extension of West 32nd Street along the northern property line, or excuse me, northern boundary of this site plan. We'll say property line at this point. They are proposing a multi-use pedestrian and a multimodal path along the southern boundary of the project site. There is an existing unnamed stream that will, my understanding, is going to be daylighted as a part of this project. So they're going to daylight that and do some riparian restoration, and this will kind of go along that riparian stream, riparian area that they're going to restore. It's going to be accessed by a stairway here, and then, of course, the sidewalk along the frontage here, so multiple people will be able to get to it. You can see all of the surface parking that's going to serve the site. Staff did work with the petition. Oh, I'm going to show you the elevations here real quick, excuse me. So those are the elevations. There's multiple elevations in your agenda packet. They're all generally similar in material, scope, scale, size. You can kind of see what the clubhouse is going to look like, and that's the pavilion there. So it's all going to kind of have the same feel. And just as a reminder, due to the phasing of the overall project and the timing of future street construction, staff has been working with the petitioner to satisfy all the infrastructure and plating requirements at specific permit stages rather than standard plating stages. All the underlying UDO requirements will continue to be met prior to occupancy of the structure, but staff did modify when and how those conditions are going to be fulfilled, and that wasn't reflected in your agenda book, so apologies for that. Just wanted to point that out to you. The site plan does meet all other UDO requirements, and staff does recommend approval of this request. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
All right, it's pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, the board will now go back to item B2, and we'll hear from Roy Howard will give the planning staff presentation, and we'll have a public hearing.
I got you on those.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So this is case W3637. The petitioners are Shyam Schlock LLC. The site is a 1.08 acre property located at the southeast intersection of Burke Mill Road and Griffith Road. And the petitioners are requesting a special use rezoning from RS9 to limited business special use, with the 2 uses being requested being convenience store and food and drug store. We take a bit of a bird's eye view here. This is, you can see the property is located in GMA 3 and in the South Ward. A little bit closer, we can see that the property in this location map is bounded on all 4 sides by residential uses, with Burke Mill Road to the north serving as the dividing line, the separation between the commercial and office areas to the north and the lighter, less intense residential uses to the south. You can see this down here. If we are looking at the area plan recommends low density attached residential for this property. This is meant to serve as an appropriate, less intense transitional use between the commercial and office uses to the north and the residential uses to the south. And approval of this request could lead to requests for additional commercial zoning along Griffith Road south of Burke Mill Road, thusly intensifying the area. Hold on. I had included some
Keep clicking. It might be there.
some pictures here. But basically, it's the old Griffith C store.
The Myers grocery.
The Myers grocery store. Here, looking at the site plan, there is one about 3,500 square foot new convenience store building that will be located at the front, the terminus of Griffith Road and Burke Mill Road. Include about 1,000 square foot patio area and a 12 pump area to the rear of the building for gas. There is a sidewalk that wraps around the building, connects both to Burke Mill Road and to Griffith Road. In terms of conditions, we are conditioning a 10-foot type 1 street yard, type 1 10-foot buffer yard along both road frontages in lieu of a typical street yard. And we also are requiring a 6-foot opaque fence to be located along both the southern and eastern boundary lines, in addition to the required 15-foot type 2 buffer yard. In addition, you can see that the developer is proposing an entrance and exit on both Burke Mill Road and Griffith Road over here. The expansion of the use will add about 930 trips to the trip count. It's worth mentioning that Burke Mill Road is currently at 14,000 trips per day, which is already currently above the 13,800 trips per day that the limit of capacity level at Surface D, and the proposed expansion would, of course, enlarge that number. If we look here at the proposed elevation, we can see the elevation on top being the view that will be facing the road, and the view on the bottom will be one facing internally towards the parking lot. So here's the same thing, but in color. You can see the convenience store out front with the patio and the pumps to the rear. So in summary, the request is not consistent with the recommendations of Forward 2045 or the Southwestern Urban Area Plan Update to limit commercial encroachment to residential areas. This request would increase traffic generation along a minor thoroughfare of Burke Mill Road that is already operating beyond its design capacity at service level D. And approval of this request could lead to requests for additional commercial zoning along Griffith Road south of Burke Mill Road. Basically, the intensity of the uses proposed be deemed inappropriate or inefficient for the area in terms of the transitional use or uses that are recommended for the property by the area plan and by Forward 2045. And therefore, though the site plan meets UDO requirements, staff recommends denial. We'll take any questions at this time.
Is the traffic count calculation or the traffic calculations, are they compared to RS9 or are they compared to its historic use?
I'll answer that, Mr. Lamb. I believe if the property were developed under the current configuration of the site, given the size and the configuration of that convenience store, it would be about 250 or so trips, I believe, is what the staff report says.
Right.
And the proposed 6 fueling stations with 2 pumps each and the attendant convenience store uses generates, I think, 1,222 trips.
Okay, thank you.
Question, the design of it and the layout. Is the store brought up to the corner as like an ode to the Myers grocery or Myers store, or is it a requirement of the district?
It's not a requirement, Mr. Farabee, of the LB district as to why the petitioner did that, I'll let them address their design intent in their presentation, but it's not an ordinance requirement.
It's a good-looking store. I actually like it with the store to the front. I'd like to see more gas stations look like that.
Yeah, I mean, again,
Yeah, hide the pumps. Hide the
calling
stuff.
calling balls and strikes. It is, this is a very well designed site. It's one of those things where probably I think some of our initial recommendations or initial discussions on this, they were originally looking at a PB design or a PB district, and so we were discussing, and if you're going to do that, you've got to have the building pulled up to the street. Again, with the intensity of traffic on Burke Mill and Griffith, it makes sense to push those driveways as far away from the intersection as you can, which kind of leads it to having the pumps to the rear and pulling the building up to the street. I'm not sure if it's the same petitioner, but at some point they changed their site plan preparer, and I think maybe they took some of the original thoughts that we had discussed under PB and kept it under this LB proposal. So again, calling balls and strikes, very good design, very attractive store, and there's not any issue with that. It's more of a land use and traffic consideration that we see as the issue. Fully acknowledging that, Myers Grocery has been there since sometime probably in the mid-20th century. I'm not sure if we have a date of how long it's been there, but it was there before there was a Haynes Mall Boulevard. It was there before any of that commercial was there. And again, so recognizing that it's there, but of course our area plans over the last several iterations of the Southwest Suburban Area Plan have always recommended that to go away as a non-conforming use. It can remain, but if it closes, it should come into compliance with the plan, and that's kind of where we are.
Did the non-use last long enough to where they lost their legally non-conforming status?
Which is a year.
No, because I'm not sure if it's still open now. It was Myers Grocery in and of itself. I think the folks that owned it sold it to someone else, or maybe they closed the business and that someone moved in and had a small convenience store. I think that they sold some convenience items, but a lot of vapes and cigarettes and those kind of things. But I can't speak today whether or not it's lost its non-conforming status, because I haven't looked, because they've been going through this process. So.
Thank you.
A question.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Back to the traffic. You had that increase from as it is today, but with the recommendation for the area plan, what would be the maximum traffic? Did anybody look at that?
So Ms. Smith, I couldn't tell you, do we know the acreage of the site? We can kind of roughly calculate it.
With some other density.
Because it's basically, it's
1.0
it's about,
acres.
7 trips per day for townhomes, because that's basically what's recommended under the area plan. So it would be significantly reduced compared to a convenience store with fuel sales.
Okay.
What's right next to it to the east, those lots?
Single-family homes.
Single-family homes, okay.
And then the RM12S with the larger buildings, that's Homestead Hills Assisted Living Facility.
Okay.
I think the homes are up for sale.
Are they?
Probably so.
So does the non-conforming status limit the hours of the business in any way? Okay.
Basically limits their ability to expand. You get a one-time expansion with a non-conforming business that is restricted, but again, it's mainly just given the fact that the current configuration of that building isn't really suitable to have the level of gasoline sales and convenience sales that they're trying to add to the site.
Any additional questions?
I guess they get a one-time expansion. I assume it's already been done, or how would this not?
No,
How does this not fit into allowing that?
Well, again, because, the one-time expansion is a 25% expansion of your existing floor area. I don't know what the size of the building is, but, again, it would be 25% of that. Again, in this context, I don't think they've ever gone down that path. I don't recall there being an expansion case on this. That goes to the Board of Adjustment, does not come to Planning Board. But, they have chosen to request a rezoning to do what they want to do.
Okay.
So that's kind of how that differentiates.
This may be a DOT question, or is there anything imminent that would improve the service level of the?
This is one of those things where, Davenport Engineering has done on behalf of the city, has done a study of that corridor several years ago. I'm not sure what the recommendations of that bore out. Of course, that would more than likely that would not be able to be captured under maintenance funds that the city has, so that would more than likely be part of a future bond initiative if there was going to be something that would be done. But that would be the only way to gain more capacity, would be to that road throughout its there's some areas that have turn lanes, but generally speaking it is a 2-lane road all the way from Hawthorne all the way to Stratford.
And just to add clarity, reiterating what's in the staff report, the petitioner is proposing a southbound left turn lane to allow full access to the driveway onto Griffith. But again, that's something that the petitioner is proposing, and it's not indicative of any DOT improvements.
When you looked at this, are you looking at this is going to capture just the traffic that's coming by? Or in my mind, I'm thinking this is going to capture the people that are already coming that way. I don't know that people are going to drive across town to come there.
That's good looking.
Well, again, I can't speak to whether or not this even required a TIA. It didn't, based on the AM and PM peak. It did not require a TIA. A TIA in and of itself would bear out what the internal capture would be of the background traffic. From our standpoint, you've got the traffic issue, but then you also have, kind of the leapfrog issue of bringing like I said, you've got the existing Myers, but they no longer have gas pumps. They haven't, they may be there, but there hasn't been gas in the ground since, I believe, whenever the last intersectional improvements were done out there. It did take away, I think, their ability to have gas. So it's, while it may have a lot of internal capture, you also, if you go one block further to the north, you have a gas station and a convenience store. So, our thought process is, you have a long corridor of area that is already zoned for commercial, and some of which could be redeveloped. This area is not an area that's recommended for that. So it's the existing traffic issue, but it's also the issue with the area plan. I'm not sure whether y'all had a chance to see the image that was up a second ago, but that was just the existing image of Myers Grocery.
So Myers was not considered commercial?
But no, it was commercial, but it was never zoned. It's always, it's always been residential.
Mm-hmm. Been there a couple times. Any additional questions for staff?
Right now.
Okay.
Just to be sure of about the letter we all received, was that from the property owner to the east?
It was from Brant Godfrey. I can't remember. I don't know exactly what parcels they own, but they own several parcels around there.
And if we could pull that up, I believe he was speaking about the ownership to the east, that he had acquired a portion from the owner of Myers with an intent to build 5 single-family houses on it, and he was highly in favor of this becoming a neighborhood amenity.
Mm-hmm. You could look at it that way, or you could also look at it as an investment, because then that would bring about the ability to get some commercial zoning there himself.
This was just his writing. But I understand what you're saying.
All right. Any additional questions? Because we do have some proponents on this. All right. Thank you, Mr. Howard. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. So,
Can you go back to the site plan?
all right. So we will go into hearing on this. It looks like proponents are Nick Blackwood and Mark Isaacson. As a reminder, each side will have 12 minutes. Again, state your name, address, and zip code for the record.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, my name is Nick Blackwood, 804 Green Valley Road in Greensboro, 27406, here on behalf of the petitioner, along with my colleague, Mark Isaacson. And we do have a representative from the property owner and petitioner here as well, if you have any specific questions to address as far as their development plans. Just to kick things off, I know that we've been discussing the history of the property, but just again to reiterate that there's been an existing commercial use on that corner for over 50 years. And so in looking at the status of what's on the ground now, what's developed around that intersection, we think that the feasibility or practicability of developing low-density residential on that corner just not quite as reasonable as perhaps allowing an existing commercial use to be reinvigorated and thrive there where it has for some time. If you'll flip along with me in your packets, page 2, and Rory covered the bulk of these zoning conditions, but just to reiterate in connection with our site plan, where you'll be able to see a couple of these items, we have proposed the condition for the 6-foot-high opaque fence along the southern and eastern boundary lines where we adjoin residential neighbors. Just in coordinating with staff and efforts to address potential impacts on those neighboring property owners, we wanted to incorporate that condition, as well as the type 1 buffering enhancement along the right-of-ways, just to make this as attractive and appealing to passerbys and those in the area. And one of the key takeaways that I would impart to you in connection with this entire project is the emphasis on walkability and pedestrian access. We'll discuss later in some additional slides some of the nearby uses. You've got a fairly dense apartment community just to the west. You have an assisted care facility to the south. We're really wanting to enhance and increase the walkability to this site for folks in the area and get some of those cars off the road. And as you may appreciate, a lot of tenants and folks who live in apartments and live in those assisted care facilities don't have access to a car all the time. So we're wanting to enhance and reinvigorate a commercial use, providing some services and some products that aren't available at the current store and make it accessible to folks without needing a car to get there. On the next slide, we took just an expanded aerial view from the county's GIS. Just wanted to highlight some of the commercial, office, and higher density residential uses in the area. Our property is outlined in yellow, and then in those red blocks that you'll see around, we've highlighted some fairly intense commercial use directly northwest of our property across the intersection in the Academy Sports Retail Center. That multifamily community that I just referenced, Burke Ridge Crossing Apartments, immediately west across Griffith Road. And we have a significant amount of office space to the northeast. So in addition to serving those residents in the area with walkable access to these goods, there's a pretty significant contingency of folks who work there in that area, and having the ability to just hop in the car, during a lunch break and drive 2 minutes down the road and get their, fresh produce, freshly made sandwiches, things that aren't currently available at that location. Grab a cup of coffee, wanting to just enhance that convenience for those folks as well who work in the area. Slide 4 is an excerpt from the zoning map, and we've went in and overlaid just to emphasize some of these varying zoning districts around the area with different colors. So you see what we're showing in red here. Those are your multifamily or higher density zoning districts just to the south. And in regard to the potential of this commercial domino effect down Griffith Road, we really see that assisted care facility as a natural kind of line of demarcation as far as expansion of commercial use. That's a well-established, long-standing development that's been there for some time. Those lots that front Griffith Road, they're all owned by the same ownership group that run the assisted care facility. So we don't see a real potential for those to, be sold off individually, kind of piecemeal, for that expansion of commercial use further down Griffith Road. Our next slide, we have just a kind of a simplified and colorized version of that site plan that you saw up on the screen a few minutes ago. Here, we just wanted to emphasize that landscaping buffer that we discussed along the right-of-ways. It's a little difficult to see, but our fence is shown. And if you look down on the southern boundary line, you'll notice that there's a retaining wall. The fence is just north of that retaining wall. So what we're wanting to do is install that fence on top of the retaining wall so that our neighbors to the south get the full benefit of having that 6-foot fence there without the slope leading down to their homes. You also note that pedestrian connectivity between Burke Mill and Griffith Road that Roy mentioned and is reflected in our zoning conditions. I think we can breeze past these next few slides as those were included in staff's presentation, but just wanted to just draw your attention to the quality and really kind of a comparison to what's being proposed and what you're going to see compared to what's on the ground now. And I think, Myers has been there for some time, and at the point in time when that was established, a smaller store like that probably was perfectly suitable for the amount of homes in the area. Obviously now, as shown on that aerial and some of the surrounding uses, the need for expanded service at that location has grown. I mean, there are more residents there to be served, and it's really just, it's too much for that existing store to handle. So after those architectural renderings, we have some photos. Again, you've seen photos similar in staff's report. On that first slide, just showing the condition of the existing store. The next two slides, I wanted to kind of give you a little image. I'm not sure if you've been in there recently, but went inside and took a few photos, and it is pretty cramped in there. It's not easy to get around. There's no fresh produce, which would be kind of one of the key points for this new store, wanting some fresh food offerings for folks who want to walk over and grab lunch. So just it's very outdated and is in need of some TLC and some updating. Slide 12. So this photo was taken from under the canopy of the existing store, facing the Burke Mill Griffith Road intersection, and you can see Academy Sports. So this property is really in the shadow of that Academy Sports Retail Center, and I just don't see I don't see it as being reasonable for anyone to come in and redevelop this and establish low-density single-family homes here at this location, given its location there at the intersection, and then what you see in the immediate area. The next slide has a copy of our notice letter that we sent to neighboring property owners. Just giving a little background on our request. We did hold a neighborhood meeting, and that information was included in the letter. No one on the mailing list attended our neighborhood meeting. We also provided our contact information and let them know that they're free to reach out if they had any comments or questions, concerns. Did not hear from any neighboring property owners with any concerns.
Sorry to interrupt. You didn't have any opposition from Homestead Hills, or you didn't have any response?
No, sir. No response with concern.
What was the radius of the notice?
500 feet.
500 feet.
Ours was 500. I can't
500
speak for
feet.
theirs.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Could have been more.
And we used the city's same mailing list. And you've already mentioned one of the letters of support. We did reach out to several adjoining property owners directly, just to follow up and give further information on the project and see if they specifically had any questions or concerns. One of those letters of support is included in your staff report. And we also received a letter of support from the owner of the apartment community to the west. I think that they see the value in providing that service for their tenants who desire a walkable access to these sort of goods. And then we also contacted the property owner who is a single-family homeowner adjacent to that apartment community, just west across Griffith Road. The resident also was in favor of our request, so that letter is also included. And then the last page in your packet, just to give some clarity on where these property owners who provided the letters of support are located. The letter in your staff report, those are the two contiguous parcels to the east of our property. And then obviously to the west, we have our single-family resident as well as the apartment community who's supportive. So in summary, just again to reiterate, it's really the walkability factor. We're wanting to provide access to these goods and services to folks who live in that immediate area. The need for this type of thing has outgrown the existing store. And just looking at the exterior condition and the way it is inside, it's in need of some updating to, come to what people expect these days with this sort of neighborhood serving store. So happy to answer any questions.
You mentioned the walkability. Could you remind me, is there sidewalk on Burke Mill Road and Griffith Road?
There is as part of this request. I can't speak to, I can't remember if we know whether there's existing sidewalk further to the east. I don't think there is, but as part of this, it would be installed.
On the portion being discussed. So I guess, how do you propose the senior citizens walk to the store?
Well, we'll, as noted by staff, we'd be required to install sidewalk on our frontage.
On your frontage.
On our frontage, yeah. So,
Okay.
and looking at let me go back to that GIS aerial.
While he's doing that, can staff bring up the site plan, the
Site plan or the aerial?
I think the site plan is what I wanted to see, but Ben will probably move to the aerial. So, yeah, everything, all the sidewalk depicted on there has got to be installed. That does not exist now. That has to be installed by the developer, right? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, and now the aerial probably.
Let's go back through the blank pictures. Well, where is the aerial? Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah, I don't think there's sidewalk. No sides. I don't know how walkable.
I think the sidewalks are only around the apartment complex, but that's further down Griffith.
On the west side of Griffith Road.
Yeah,
By the apartments.
on the west side.
So where do
You can hit plus.
Right, the apartments, they have sidewalk, because I'm looking at it here, but it ends at their property.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then there would be sidewalk here.
yeah. Have to
What's
cross
that
over.
distance walk? Any idea?
From where to where?
From Homestead Hills to, I know Homestead Hills, there's a pretty good walk. Because it's on the right the right side is same, but it's a good little distance,
Quarter
maybe
mile,
a mile.
probably. 1,000 feet to a quarter mile,
Exercise.
1,000, 1,200 feet without a sidewalk.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Kirk's been keeping time, but there is 1 minute left if there's anyone else to speak from the proponents, if there aren't any more questions.
Okay. All right, is Mr. Mark
I'll just say hello. I'm Mark Isaacson, same office address.
I'm sorry, you mind stating it, though?
I'm sorry, Mark Isaacson. I'm an attorney in Greensboro, and Nick and I are in the same law firm. I just wanted to introduce myself. We, have worked with staff on this closely, and we added some conditions in response in our meetings. We just respectfully disagree with the staff's position on this. I was chairman of the Greensboro Planning Board for several years. I worked with staff there for a number of years, and have a great deal of respect for the planning staff in Greensboro and in Winston. But here, I think it's important to note that this is a commercial use that's been here for decades. And the question, I guess, is whether it's realistic to expect that someone would build a residence here. And we think that the opportunity to allow an existing commercial use to redevelop and thrive and serve the area should take priority here. And we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. All right. No one has signed up as opposition. Is anyone here wanting to speak in opposition? All right, seeing no one, I now declare the public hearing closed. Board discussion, thoughts?
I've done all of it LBS, every bit of it.
I think Ms.
Is the area plan, one quickly, how old is the area plan? You probably mentioned it and I missed it.
16,
16? Okay, 9
14.
years.
15.
50. Oh, split the difference.
Pretty good. Yeah, probably something worth looking at in the next.
I mean, again,
area planning.
I'm sorry. Again, that's one of those things that we will take a look at the next time that we do this. It is one of those things where there was a heavy discussion when the, obviously things change over time, but whenever the shopping center at the corner came with the academy and, some of those discussions happened, if you kind of look what happened on the corner to the west with the RM18S, they actually tried to acquire the property on the corner, but that person didn't want to sell. So that's why there's a remnant of existing single family over there. But if you look at the pocket of RS9 on the east side of Griffith Road and the south side of Burke Mill, and you look at kind of the potting that has happened in different places over there, that is an area that very easily could be an RM8 or RM12S type of situation with a rezoning that, turns its back to the street and is internally focused, and again, keeps consistency with the plan and provides for commercial where commercial has been identified in the plan to be. Again, the planning board and the elected body could have a different decision, and if so, then ultimately the plan, at least for the parcel under question, becomes changed in the plan if that's the action that gets taken. But again, from a planning staff perspective, whenever you look at the fact that if you take the intersection of Burke Mill and taking the existing Myers Grocery that's been there for 70 years out of the equation, if you start at the Burke Mill intersection on Griffith Road and go south, there isn't any commercial until you get down to the industrial area down close to the sewer treatment plant. If you go to the east along Burke Mill Road, again, taking away the backside of office buildings and things that, are along there that you can see, but there is a residential kind of buffering area along there to the north side. On the south side of Burke Mill, there is nothing besides institutional or residential going all the way back over to Hawthorne. So again, this is going to be somewhat precedent setting if this were to get rezoned to commercial. Again, you have an existing non-conforming grocery that, like I said, has been there at least 60, 70 years, but was acquired a year and a half ago, or actually a little less than a year and a half ago, with RS zoning, with the understanding that, again, this is RS zoning and the recommendation in the plan is for attached multifamily. So, it's one of those things. Obviously, the planning board and the elected body can make a recommendation and decision respectively that doesn't follow the plan, but we've done a pretty good job of sticking to what the plans have shown and discussed over the last 30, 40 years.
I think Ms. Smith's comment about the idea of capturing traffic that's already there, I don't think they're building a Buc-ee's here. They're not going to draw people from miles around necessarily so much as they're going to have people that are in the neighborhood already. Quite frankly, if it's service level D, folks aren't going to go out of their way to get in that much traffic just to go to a corner store. I do think the design is fantastic. It's ironic to me that oftentimes we have a whole room full of folks when you've got a service level C street talking about how bad it's going to make the traffic. Here we've got service level D and nobody from the neighborhood showing up telling us that it's going to make things worse. Maybe they've just resigned themselves to the fact that it's as bad as it's going to get. I mean, maybe the highest and best use is to put a traffic circle there. I don't know, but that's not really what we're trying to decide today. It's just very telling to me that nobody from the neighborhood, when that's always what we hear is traffic, 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 that's telling to me.
Well, I was thinking about, Chris said about the options there. You've got it, to me, they're competing, but right now you have a reinvestment and continuing something with that history there. You don't at the moment have anybody compiling all of those small parcels to create something like the multifamily that would be there. I think that may be difficult to do. It's not like you've got another one big piece there. Compiling all those small parcels, I think, would be a big difficulty potentially. So I'm thinking of the history of I do think the history of the property is important in this, and looking at what the options would be. I don't think that would prohibit, maybe it would spur some other development or compiling of those parcels adjacent to it for what the plan calls for. But I don't in this particular case see, because it has such a long history, I don't see another parcel in that area that would have that weight to say, oh, they approved this, so now we must approve this other rezoning to commercial like that.
Yeah, clearly it's not consistent with the area plan, but given the fact that you had that history there, also it would be a neighborhood store, and I understand the thought that you would compile these properties, bundle them together, and do some multifamily or townhouses, but considering it's an old gas station, I'm not really sure who wants to put a house on top of an old gas station. Who knows what's in the ground? A gas station on a gas station seems appropriate. And it could be, an amenity for the neighborhood. So the design really kind of helps push it forward, I think. And there's still the opportunity, like Ms. Smith said, that some of the other parcels could come back for townhomes or something like that. And the sidewalks, unfortunately, they would not connect to anything. But then again, the apartments across the street, when they were built, they don't connect to anything either. But with the hope that we will be a walkable place one day. And that's kind of the way that I'm looking at it.
So it sounds like I'm hearing almost a consensus from the board of where you're leaning. Does any board member have a different opinion?
Yeah, I think, I recognize the history. At the end of the day, it's a larger gas station. I don't, to say that this is going to be a fresh produce, walkable, connected community store seems to me like, hopeful thinking and wishful thinking. I think increasing pedestrian walkability as it stands today would be a hazard. The vehicular concern about the number of trips potentially generated today seem like a potential concern. So I guess I'm leaning in the opposite direction.
Okay. All right, so we've kind of heard from literally everyone. Would anyone like to put this
I'll make a
to
motion. Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board find that the request is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan.
I have a motion for Mr. Inconsistency by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
And Mr. Chairman, I further move the planning board recommend approval of W 3637.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposes?
Aye.
5 to 6 to 2.
6 to 2.
All right, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman of the board, that brings us to staff report, and I've got to get to my notes. Got too many things lately. The first item we'll hear on under staff reports, we'll hear the zoning case preview for February from Mark.
Yes, we've got in February, we have 2 new rezoning cases, 2 new planning board reviews, and 1 continuation that you just you saw earlier today of the first case, so.
And we're trying to get to the PowerPoint slide. There we go.
That's it, that's all I got.
Looking, it's looking.
That's right. That's what we have for February, so quicker one.
And Mr. Chairman of the Board, again, we try to provide some either upcoming information or some things that our staff has been working on. You see there are a number of images, some public art that's been recently installed over the last several months. So wanted to call attention to that. For work.
Question for that.
Yes,
Is there
sir.
a way does the general community overall know about all of this public art, or do you just stumble on it? Has there ever been?
There is a dedicated website for public art that is an interactive map that shows where installations are. And when things go out, marketing and communication will send, information out related to them. Other than that, if no one is going looking for them, they just stumble upon it.
Like finding an Easter egg.
Yeah, it would seem like it's a waste. I mean, it's a good idea, but if there was a way to have a general, like, find a public art day or something.
Noted, and I'll make sure that Amy passes something along those lines to Kelly. Secondly, the January work session. I want to tell you that more than likely, if it isn't a problem for y'all, we would like to cancel that meeting. We have a number of things that have conspired.
What's going on?
With the comp plan on hold at the county level, that has kind of put us on a kind of a holding pattern for working on some of the, like beginning preparation to work on area plans. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of Senate Bill 382 that passed. That was partly the Helene Recovery Act, but it had a provision in there that dealt with downzoning. And not only can now local governments not downzone anyone's property without their permission, but you can't change the development ordinance for commercial properties that take away any current rights that they have currently. So that's one of those things that was part of that omnibus bill that has also thrown a wrinkle into some text amendments that we could be working on. And as part of the city's legislative agenda, that's something that they're looking to get repealed in the long session that is getting ready to start. The cyber event and the holidays, all four of those things have kind of conspired. We don't really have anything to give you, and we don't feel like that y'all would get much benefit out of meeting just for the sake of meeting. So we will not have a meeting in January if that's okay, and we will come back to you with items in February.
Anyone opposed to that? We should just come hang out.
They're going to do a demonstration of how to use the mimeograph machine to make copies.
We can give you a demonstration on how to issue hand issue permits, which we've done 900 times over the last 2 weeks. Did you have something?
Oh, I was just going to say, we might even take some volunteers.
Yeah. The final thing that I'll mention under staff report is that earlier today, planning member Mo McRae submitted her resignation just because of work obligations. She has been discussing this for a while and has felt bad of not being able to be here as much as she has, as many times as she's missed for work. So I did want to let everyone on the planning board know that she did submit her resignation today. So, and with that, Mr. Chairman, I have no other items.
All right, Mr. Stillman.
I would just like, since this is our first meeting since Christmas, I would like to commend and congratulate every single one of you on the staff for the phenomenal job you did of decorating your offices for the holidays. That's public art.
We were actually the winner this year, so we should have won last year, but we won't talk about that.
So before we go over the holidays, just letting you all know Jason's father passed away, for those who were not aware, on the 29th. So our thoughts and prayers with you and your mom and your family. We can't imagine. So thank you very much. You're welcome. Anything else for the good of the order?
So we'll have our motion to adjourn.
So moved. All right.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.